So coming from our first match, we have taken out a lot of experience from this. One of them is we shouldn't procrastinate because last time we were too biased on one side. So we definitely fixed that. And number two is that we should have more of a chill attitude. So this time we took a much milder approach, and that helps our teamwork a lot.
I think this is a less difficult motion than the last time, and because of that we have been able to explore a lot more options. We've had a lot more freedom in how we should tackle different stakeholders, different groups, and how it would impact the society on an individual level as well as a broader societal level.
The benefit of this motion is that we are one of the stakeholders. This motion is really related to our own daily lives as a student. So yeah, it definitely helped us a lot in doing our case. Ams Kira!
After the first round of the debaters, we had a thorough discussions with our mentor, and based on the feedback of all the judges, we made some adjustment to our strategy as well as content distribution between all the speaker roles.
So Lost Stars was actually quite afraid when they first saw this motion because they thought intuitively our side was a bit more tricky. So I helped them mostly by supporting them to believe more in our stance, as well as giving them the confidence to run rhetorics that are already quite personal to us as children of parents. Mostly that, yeah.
We also looked at a lot of other debates by many better debaters than us to get from their experience and get from their ideas, and some of us even talked to our parents about their opinions regarding this as well.
We think that we would definitely nail the next debate. Lost Stars.
Stars but never lost.
Come and ignite your passion. Ignite your passion.
Welcome back to The Debaters Season 3, a debate game show for high school students all across Vietnam. In production by VTV7 and British University Vietnam. My name's Long Vo, and I'll be your host today. We've already selected one team for our semifinals, and tonight we will select another team for our semifinals. The losing team today doesn't need to worry though, because after we select our 3 contestants for the semifinals, we will select one additional team to compete. With that being said, let's present our motion for today. That schools should teach students to be respectful rather than obedient to parents. In comparison, Eastern and Western cultures do have some differences, and particularly with this subject, many families tend to disagree. In the East, many parents believe that students should just listen, whereas in the West, a lot of times parents allow for compromise with the students. I think it'll be pretty interesting to see the students' views on how they should be able to talk to their parents. With that being said, let me invite up our competing teams today. On the proposition team, may I please have Ams Kira. And on the opposition team, may I please have Lost Stars. And with that being said, we would not be complete without our very, very great judges. Welcome back, guys. Mr. Hugh, how do you feel about this particular motion?
It seems like a transcendent topic of all time, so I feel like interesting, sensitive, controversial, very relevant. But I'm sure the students will have a lot of good insights. And I think it's also a nice time for parents to listen to opinions and ideas of this new generations of students. So can't wait to see how the debate evolves.
Nice. Ms. Wing, do you think that the students are going to have a different viewpoint than your generation?
Very good question. Actually, I've been thinking about that as well, because even in my generation, there are a lot of different viewpoints about this issue, especially the definition of being respectful and being obedient. It's actually the lines a little bit blurred in here as well. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the innovative ideas that the students are going to bring to the debate today.
Thank you. And Mr. Stewart, being from the West, I know that we like to compare the West and the East all the time. Is there anything particular that you've noticed in Vietnam versus back home in parenting styles?
To be honest with you, I see probably more similarities than I do differences between the way that I was raised and the way that my friends were raised in the UK, and actually families and how they operate here in Vietnam. There are slight differences in terms of certain expectations, but I actually personally see more similarities than I do differences.
Nice, thank you. Nice to hear from all three of you guys today. Without further ado, may I please invite up our first two speakers. From the proposition side, may I please have Nguyễn Tú Quyên. Welcome.
Hi.
And from the opposition side, may I please have Đoàn Đức Huy. Welcome, guys. So I remember last time you're quite an energetic person. Are you going to take a different approach as being the opening speaker?
I think my style stay the same because I'm basically the same person and I'm kind of on a caffeine high at this moment, so I might be more hyperactive than normal.
Okay, thank you for sharing so much and good luck, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. And so being the first speaker up, do you feel like you have any particular role that you need to play, or do you have any particular expectations for how you're going to perform?
I think that the first speaker plays such an important role in this debate because, like Ms. Nguyen said, there is a blurring in the definitions between the two sides, so both the first speakers should be really, really careful so that we would have a good debate.
Okay, well, sounds like you know what you need to do, so good luck, okay?
Okay, yes,
Perfect.
sir.
Before the first round starts, I'm going to go over the rules really quickly with you guys. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. During the first round, there'll be no POIs, and we'll start up with the proposition side. Any questions?
No.
Perfect. With that being said, let the debates begin.
As the movie Pinocchio stated, "Father, when can I leave to be on my own? I have the whole world to see." We believe that on our side is the only team that can provide the freedom to explore the world to these children. Firstly, 4 points of setup. Number 1, respectful means that we are teaching these students not to disrespectful things, and they have to bear in mind parental guidance. So in the case of disagreements, they will respectfully disagree and discuss in a civil way, not shouting or verbally abusing their parents. And what is exclusive on the proposition side is that they're allowed to be skeptical. They can reevaluate and think critically about parental authority. Furthermore, that we believe that schools are the respected authority that have the trust from parents and the society. So if these schools push that narrative, parents will accept several narratives more gradually, that parents can make wrong decisions and children are capable of thinking for themselves. Number 2, obedience means that you will comply without questioning or defying anything. Number 3, we believe that the main demographic of this debate is teens, since they are the one who have formed individual opinions. And because if you really consider kids under that, they are too gullible and they rely too much on their parents, and they have not any individualism yet. And number 4, since these decisions often affect these teenagers directly, they are at a unique position when their opinion cannot be disregarded. Now, coming to our first argument about suppression and natural growth. Firstly, what I'd like to state is that the prevalent narratives of tough love and parents know best are generating a general dismissal of children's feelings from parents. If they do really care about children's feelings, it doesn't really matter in this debate whether they are respectful or obedient or not. So this means that these children have to suppress personal feelings and identity and their ideas just for the role of an obedient child. This means they'll feel rejected by the prominent figures in their lives. They feel guilt, shame, and fear. Parents also expect children to follow the obsolete notions of success or the right way because they turned out financially well. And they think that this is the only thing that matters. This means they'll compare and punish their children if they delineate. And there's the general ignorance towards mental health, which means there are not many outlets to let out feelings for children, and if they do, no one listens to them. So what happens on their side is that there's going to be a lot of mental problems. For example, LGBT youth with rejecting families are 8 times more likely to attempt suicide. And children with internalized feelings, they do not know how to communicate emotions, and they have lower self-esteem. On our side, they have better growth without any suppression. They feel validated, and they can discuss several things, and they have the better ability to think critically and articulate feelings, and they know what they want and need. Furthermore, we'd like to state about the vulnerable stakeholder of this debate when we have 72.84% of Vietnamese children experiencing domestic abuse. We believe that on their side, this is the perfect excuse to justify violence and mental abuse from parents, and kids will have to suffer silently. What the society on their side will be is there will be less understanding towards the children, and they will blame children rather than hold the parents accountable. What happens on our side is that the kids will feel more safe and more comfortable and to speak up, and this can solve a lot of more children abuse case, and our society will trust the kid more and listen to them. For all of those reasons, peace vote proposition.
Biggest questions I would like to have to the proposition side is that how good they teach children to do so. Because they take in the case a lot of things like, okay, I would teach them about LGBT, I would teach them about progressive things. Remember, teachers are likely to be from the same generation as parents. Therefore, if parents are likely to believe in those things, teachers are also likely to believe in these things. The second response that I'd like to give to their side is that they are likely to take in the cases like abusive parents. Firstly, note that what you teach the children doesn't change the fact that those parents are already bad. And when those parents are already bad and they see that school are giving those children a tool against me, they are likely to be over control even more. But thirdly, we believe that this is exclusive in the motion to the relationship between parents and children. Therefore, we believe that children can also develop the critical thinking ability in the relationship with friends, in the relationship with the surrounding. So let's come into our first argument in this debate. Firstly, teaching children to obey parents is justifiable and necessary for their development. Firstly, we will characterize why children tend to make worse decisions than their parents. The first layer for this is that the thought process of children and parents are relatively different because students of this age, they are concerned about what those things, about trends, about peer pressures, and about how to fit in. Therefore, their decisions tend to be short-term and temporary. Meanwhile, parents would like to focus more on the aspects such as financial sustainability and long-term impacts on children's lives. The reason for this, because that parents at the end of the day are legally liable for all the decisions made by their offspring. Therefore, in the most extreme case, they are likely to make the long-term decisions that is in the best interest of the children. The second layer for this characterization is that children are often sheltered from the consequence of their actions. So therefore, in general, children can visualize the tangible weight as well as the real-life consequence of their actions. Next, we believe that we have two main mechanisms for this argument. Firstly, the priority of children are fundamentally clash with the concerns of parents. Therefore, the temperaments of this young age will also prevent children from seeing what is right for them. Therefore, we believe that if we teach children to be skeptical of parental authority, they will undermine the significance of parent guidance and as they mistakenly judgment that the decision is equal to parents. Therefore, the impacts of this argument is as following. There are distorted norms in the society that urge children toward inappropriate behaviors, such as smoking is a cool way to express their maturity. And if students do not prioritize the guidance from their parents, they are likely to be susceptible to those detrimental temptations. Because parents are the only ones that can do this, because school teach hundreds of students that cannot care for all, and parents are the only ones that cares for the children the most. And we believe that we also take a statistics to counter the case, because we believe that according to the American statistics, they show that 46.6% of the American teenagers have tried drugs as one in their life, and that based on the case, we are proud to oppose.
Nice. Can I please start off with Mr. Hugh? Can I please have your remarks?
Thank you, guys. You guys obviously are two very seasoned and very, strong skill set debaters. So for the proposition team, I think your arguments, I take it, but sometimes I feel like it's lacking the mechanism for me. For example, you haven't really shown how the mechanism of obedience will lead to mental problems. Otherwise, it feels like you're making too much of an assumption on the other side of the team, which is, for me, it's not really convincing. I don't want you to feel like your case is not strong, but because we have two very strong opponents to each other, so I have to really nitpicking into the arguments. With the opposition team, you have 3 rebuttals, but to be honest, the first one about teachers are in the same generation with parents, not necessarily so. When you go to your argument about decisions of parents versus the decisions of students, I feel like you guys need an extra push on the characterizations of those students a little bit more, rather than just say young students tend to be hasty and things like that. I like the mechanism you lay out. There's some nuances in your mechanism as well. But overall, with the two sides right now, I feel like you guys need to be able to prove to me, for the abusive parents, can you guys solve the problems or not? And for the non-abusive parents and normal students, how something like this could affect them as well. That said, I give my 10 point to the team that give me a little bit more nuances in this round, so my 10 points go to the opposition team.
Thank you so much. And Stuart, can I please hear from you?
It is a delight to watch. It really is. Both sides came with a real sense of clarity over the development of their ideas and arguments in their cases and the mechanisms. What I would say for the proposition side, I think there are some logical jumps. For example, a suppression of ideas or can then eventually lead to mental problems. There's a gap in between there that we need to have fleshed out a little bit. What I think you did very well, though, is you very, very clearly laid out the main points of your case. And I think actually both teams did this really well. You did at least attempt to talk about the impact. What I would say, though, is that there are still a few gaps between the primary point and the impact. For the opposition sides, again, like the proposition, you came with a real clarity over building your case and building your arguments. There are a few points that I think have a bit of an Achilles heel. One of them is this notion that teachers can't fulfill the role of teaching their students what is the right thing to do. And I think you're going to have to kind of explain in more detail why teachers don't have that ability to do that. For me, I really enjoyed the first round, but I think in terms of how robust the points were, I'm going to go actually for a proposition because I think you guys have set it up very, very nicely.
Perfect, thank you so much. So that puts us at a tie of 10-10. Ms. Uing, let's break the tie.
First of all, let's talk about proposition side. I agree with most of the things my fellow judges said. Just want to add a little bit more is that I like the way that whenever you finish one small point, you put a comparison in there, which make the case really, really clear for me. The small problem I have with your case is that after hearing your case, I was wondering, like, what is the outcome? What is the impact that you're trying to show? Because in this motion, we talk about like being respectful, being obedient, right? And also there are many different types of parents. There are many different types of abuse. Also, there are many different types of children and how they respond to those situations. So I think it would be better if you can have some more nuance into your speech. For the opposition side, I really like your style, especially how you began the debate with like really nice. You impressed me a lot. I think your rebuttal is actually not very sound for me. Now, I have one small problem with your case is that I know that in this debate, it's basically you're going to talk about, like doubting parents' authority. But unfortunately, the motion doesn't mention about authority in here. The key words in this motion are respectful and obedient. And unfortunately, I didn't see a lot of those keywords mentioned in your speech. So I think it would be better if I can hear more when you talk about obedience, like how obedience is going to affect a little bit more, like connection with the motion would be better for your case. Okay, so the breaking point, the tipping point in here for me is that between the teams, which case I think is stronger. So I would agree with Mr. Hugh that the case of the opposition side seems tighter for me. So the ideas are more, like well connected. While on the proposition side, there's a lot of jumping ideas in there. And the outcome, as I said, is not very clear. So my 10 points will go to the opposition side.
Thank you so much. With that being said, proposition side has 10 points and the opposition side has 20 points. But it's still a close tie, guys. How do you feel about the remarks from the judges? Do you think they're fair?
I think they are fair, but I think that there is a lot more coming from our second speaker that solves a lot of those problems.
Well, nice. You have a very constant confidence. I really like it.
Well, it's how you cope in life. Fake it till you make it, though.
Fake it till you make it. There you go. That's a good motto. Good luck to you, okay?
Thank you.
Yep. Well, you got 20 points. Are you pretty proud of yourself?
Yes, like I've said, this motion is quite difficult, so I think that we definitely need to improve in the characterizations that the judges have talked about.
Well, it looks like you've taken some notes, so good luck on the second round, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice hearing from both of you. You can please take a seat. With that being said, we'll be right back, folks.
And what is exclusive on the proposition side is that they're allowed to be skeptical. They can reevaluate and think critically about parental authority.
Children are often sheltered from the consequence of their actions. So therefore, in general, children can visualize the tangible weight as well as the real-life consequence of their actions.
You're making too much of an assumption on the other side of the team, which is, for me, it's not really convincing.
Welcome back to the Debaters Season 3. We're now coming into round 2. As of right now, the proposition team has 10 points and the opposition team has 20 points. It's still pretty close, folks. With that being said, let me invite up to the stage our second 2 speakers. From the proposition side, may I please have Khúc Minh Thủy. Welcome. And from the opposition side, may I please have Phan Thế Việt. Welcome. From the critiques from the first round, are you going to change anything this time around?
So definitely gonna change a lot, gonna push the impact and improve on the mechanics.
Okay, sounds like you have a plan. Good luck.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you the same question. So second time around, are we gonna apply any different tactics?
I think I'm first off definitely going to be more clear on our stance on the matter, as well as be more explicit in what our definitions mean and what we view this debate as a whole.
Okay, sounds like you're pretty strong there, so good luck to you, okay?
Thank you.
Perfect. Before we start our second round, I'm gonna review the rules very quickly. For the second round, each speaker will have 4 minutes. POIs are allowed under 15 seconds, and we'll start with the proposition team. With that being said, let the debates begin.
First, some rebuttals. Yes, we think that parents are abusive. However, exclusive on our side is the fact that students will now be able to speak up. That they recognize that yes, parents are not always right. That you don't always have to be obedient to those abusive ideas. That now with the spread of social media, they can certainly speak up much more easily. That they are easily going to be rescued and protected by the people that are totally strangers. They're going to rescue them from those situations. We think that it's totally possible, and it's much better rather than on their side of the house when these children think that is okay for them to suffer from those things and gain many of the physical abuse and also mental abuse as well. Now, second, on the point about worst decision, we think that the problem here is that teenagers also have like great brain development by then. And secondly, they also have the use of information and research by themselves. And thirdly, exclusive on our side, we think that they have the unique position in these decision making. We think that they are relevant, that they are affected by the situation, and therefore their opinions are not to be disregarded. The parents should hear them out instead of saying that yes, you have to be obedient. These are the points that you have to follow. We think that only outside the house, when they are only respectable, that they will have the chance to speak up these opinions. And also on the point about critical thinking, we think that children spend a lot of time with their families, and also they are affected a lot by their families. So the fact that at this age, they're also affected by their ego as well. So we think that it's very important for them to develop critical thinking, not only with their friends, and suddenly at home they are suspended from all of those things, but being able to naturally have critical thinking at home as well. Thirdly, on the point about like temptation, I will rebut this in my point about making less mistakes. Outside of the house will actually be the side making less mistakes. The premise is that there will be better communication and understanding. We see that on their side of the house, parents see their kids always obeying. They would not have the urge to have deep conversation with their kids. And secondly, they feel comfortable that they are supported by the notion of society, that they think that they understand their kids without ever being challenged. We think that the kids also feel that they're inferior, that their opinions are invalidated, they are always not relevant, even though the decision affect themselves. And then we see that this lack of in-depth conversation. When children make mistakes, they're always trying to hide it because they think that parents don't understand them. On our side of the house, we think that kids feel normal to have different views, parents as well, and therefore we have this flow of conversation much better. And when parents have this urge, this incentive to explain to the kids so roughly, we think that children will better understand the situation, and therefore they will not make mistakes, and even when they do, they will not make the same mistakes ever again, and they will not fall into this temptation because they know the root of the problem. Rather than on their side of the house, they only know the surface and never really understand why I shouldn't do this, why I shouldn't do that. Outside of also style that exclusively do so. Thirdly, on the point about like why this is so important, we think that it's so important that at this young age of laying the foundation for everything later in life, the kids know why the root of the reason why I shouldn't do this, why I shouldn't do that. Later on, there will be the compass for them in their later life. Thirdly, about the point about society and family, we think that family will become more open, and we have established this kind of understanding. There will be power imbalances and also no oppression. We think that they will ultimately lead to a more honest and healthier relationship overall, which always ultimately benefit children and parents as well. So on societal level, we think that as parents hear more from the kids, it will break this cycle of conservative ideas that on their side of the house, kids will have these internalized the older generation have internalized ideas from the past that financial success defines them, and the fact that parents abuse them is the right way. But
and therefore they apply to the younger generation. We think that the only way that we can break this conservative cycle is by kids speaking up, by kids really showing what is the right, what is their opinion, what is the progressive ideas, and by doing so, we think that as there are better understanding, as there are better progress, we ultimately lead to more, not only on a family level, but also on a societal level. When we have more progress and more changes, we have much better communication. So overall, we think that there will be a better situation about like kids and parents when they have less situational abuse, and also they have much better critical thinking and conversation overall.
Is it not true that your trip here today was provided for by your parents? Is it not true that your standing here is a product of your parents' care and shelter? Opposition says, after all their nurturing and protection, to be obedient. Now, faith in them is the least we could do. Firstly, some rebuttals as to their case. I think first off, I would clarification as to our stance, right? I think respect as a whole means we are treated as equals, means that there is equal say in these problems between parents and child, while obedience, which we support on our side, means there is an inherent power dynamic when there is an authority in our parents' voices, when our parents have more say in us in these critical decisions. Now, onto our rebuttals, right? Firstly, on the point of abuse, I say it's wholly likely that if you just speak up to your parents who are inherently abusive, they're just going to become more aggressive, they're just going to hurt you even more, right? But two, on the point of suppressing who they are fundamentally, right? We say that most of these concerns from these children are most likely minimal or petty, like whether or not they should have to go to school today or whether or not they should do their homework, right? We say if they were sensible, parents would have already given them freedom, would have already treated them like adults, which is the case until today, right? But also, right, we say that only when they become obedient, they learn what's good, and actually can develop thinking of what is the morality in today's world, which they can never gain in terms of have complete freedom on your side of the house. Now, onto our case, right? Our first thesis is that we say parents have rightfully earned their authority. Imagine this, our parents work a 9 to 5, sometimes even more. They endure constant days of the same repetitive, grueling task. Also, they can put food on the table for us. And by the time they return home, they are drained and exhausted, and yet they find the mental capacity and willpower to make time for us, to listen to our complaints, and to make sure we're asleep on time, without ever expecting for anything in return. Also, we can grow up full of happiness and rid of the burdens only adults should ever have to bear. Furthermore, is the fact that regardless of whether their fault or ours, parents will be the ones to take responsibility in the end. And in consideration of their immense efforts and duties, we say it is wholly justified to listen to what they want us to do. Then on, schools therefore have no right to interfere within our family relationships, right? One, we ask you, by what metric have these institutions earned the right to instill skepticism within the minds of our youth and to challenge the authority of our parents, considering they bear no direct responsibility to our mistakes? But two, schools can fundamentally never accommodate for the individual nuances of each family, such as our respective socioeconomic statuses, such as our individual traditional values. The teachings here will be extremely general, meaning proposition only convey the wrong message to the students. But let's say even if proposition manages to prove certain benefits, right? We say they still have no justification in doing this, and the weighing here is that at best, the minimal gains on their side is farly outweighed by the extra hardships placed on our parents when they're already struggling so much to raise us in such a rapidly changing era. But secondly, how does this negatively worsen family dynamics, right? We say once some things are just not up to discussion, and let it be known that it is inherently a waste of time to have to entertain or challenge these ideologies. And yet children are by nature curious or self-centered, right? And when they are taught they don't need to be obedient, when there is a growing skepticism within the minds of children, it leads to parents feeling doubted and that their efforts to raise them were in vain. And it's purely human nature to feel irritated and growing increasingly frustrated as the behavior repeats daily, as they are bombarded with questions about why do I need to wear long sleeves when it's the winter, or why should I bring an umbrella should it be raining outside. The impact is that it is growing tension and distress within the household, and children are therefore much less likely to seek out advice from their parents, especially when they're so vulnerable and don't know enough. But two, we say that when parents feel that authority is not being respected, when they feel that their words are no longer reaching their children, they will try to assert their authority through different means, such as restricting their lives or taking away privileges. The alternative here, which is on our side of the house, so long as we listen to our parents, we say, and they are no longer worried about us, they will still allow us freedom. They will still allow us to become our own person within their acceptance. As a closing closing remark, I'd like to address every single audience listening now. At the end of the day, there is a comfort in your parents' guidance. There is an immense assurance in knowing where to go and what to do always. We say opposition is grateful for this guidance.
Nice job, guys. Perfect. Judges, are we ready? Why don't I start off with Ms. Uing? Can I please have your remarks?
First of all, for the proposition side, I think your speech is generally really nice. There are a lot of ideas in there. The structure is very clear for me. However, I have two problems in your speech. First of all, I don't see a lot of characterization in terms of like different types of students because, you know, like there are a lot of different types of them and I haven't heard it from the first speaker and up until now, I think the characterization is a little bit lacking. Second of all, you talk a lot about students, but how do parents actually respond to this? Because you say, oh, we can build like critical thinking, the student will speak up. How do these parents respond? And there are, remember, a lot of types of parents as well. For the opposition side, your idea is actually really nice, but up until the end, when I want to hear the impact, when I hear more explanation, maybe you're a little bit rushed to go through all of the ideas. That's why your ideas are a little bit shallow. For example, you talk about like, oh, actually, if you listen to your parents, they're going to give you more freedom. That's a really interesting point. I want to hear more, like, why is it? Like, how is it? Because you both talk about freedom, right? And that's a direct clash. You should spend a little bit more time on that, for example. Now, the biggest problem in this turn for me is that the lack of engagement from two sides, because prop side talk about the viewpoints of the students, while op side talks only about the parents. I think in the last turn, you guys should jump into the others, world and trying to explain, okay, so how do parents on your side actually gonna do better, or how do students on your side actually gonna do better? You really close, but you're not there yet. So I'm leaning a little bit to the proposition side for the reason that I feel like you deal with more problems and your case in general are more well-connected than the opposition side.
So now we're at a tie, 20-20. Stuart, let's break the tie.
For the proposition side, there were some points that I really liked and some that I thought were a little bit shaky. So for example, ones that I really liked is I love this idea of, for a respectful manner, students can start to own their mistakes. They can, through conversation, they can build up a dialogue with their parents. This is, in a lot of ways, more impactful in terms of if you can own your mistakes, you have a better mentality that you can take into future. The aspects I find that a little bit shaky is students can talk about their opinions. There are some aspects of that I think we need to explain. Why is that important? Why is it important for students to mention their opinions? What impact does that have? And what kind of further impact does it have for both themselves, but also for other students? Okay. For Viet, some points I liked again, and some points I thought were shaky. So for example, the notion of obedience leading to morality. I wasn't quite sure where obedience made a direct line towards a better understanding of morality, or at least what morality looks like that had been spawned from obedience. I do think that your points for your characterizations, for example, the parents earning authority and parents being the correct role model to guide students, sometimes that characterization was a little bit limited because we can't across the board know that all parents are equipped to do so. However, I think, as we said, in terms of how tight your arguments are, I'm going to go for the opposition side, because I think at the moment your ideas are more coherently linked together, and I think for the third round you can really push those forward. Okay?
Thank you. So that breaks the tie. Now you guys are in the lead by 10. And who? Can I please hear from you?
This is what I want to say first. I feel like when the opposition team come in and they throw in the definition of respectful and obedient now, is probably they don't buy your definition in the first round. Like for them, now respect is treated as equal, and then obedient means like there's just the inherent power imbalance. So I feel like just a quick comment for the third debaters, otherwise you two will end up with just like two different set of definition, which makes it very hard for me as a judge to know what to buy, what not to buy. So I think that's just something like you guys have to tie up for me on both sides. So now what like which one are you going to debate on in terms of the definition of respectful and obedient. The second thing is with the proposition team, your rebuttals, to be honest, I found quite weak because the first one is about like social media and now children are protected by strangers on social media. Not sure. Second thing is you say that teenagers have great brain development in this time. I'm not sure it's scientifically valid, but it seems like a big statement come in and there's not much of validation to that fact, right? The third one is like children need to develop critical thinking at home as well, but how like teaching students to be respectful to parents will develop their critical thinking. I agree when your main argument come in with like allow students to have deep conversations with parents as well, that's nice. But then towards the end, when you make it to like the foundation for later in life, the family and the society, that's where it starts to be too much of a jump. With the opposition team, your rebuttal is pretty much just the repetition of the first argument. I like the fact that you give further characterization to the students and the parents, and you choose a different strategies. You just keep pushing about the dynamics between parents and students, which give it more nuance and more development, but then you lack the society and the family level when you move up. So right now, I could say, I think in the end, as of right now, combined with the first and the second one, which one give me a clearer and more logical and more substance argument? So even though they only have developed one line of argument and not bringing it to the society level yet, but I think it's strong enough to stand on its own. So I give my 10 points to the opposition team.
Thank you, judges. With that being said, proposition team, you guys have 20 points. Opposition team, you guys have 40 points. So you are in a lead, but there's still plenty of time for many things to change. Thank you guys so much. Please take a seat. And stay tuned. We'll be right back with the third round of debates.
We think that they are relevant, that they are affected by the situation, and therefore their opinions are not to be disregarded.
We say that when parents feel that authority is not being respected, when they feel that their words are no longer reaching their children, they will try to assert their authority through different means, such as restricting their lives or taking away privileges.
I wasn't quite sure where obedience made a direct line towards a better understanding of morality.
Welcome back to the Debaters Season 3. We've now coming into our third round of debates. With that being said, let's get right into our debates. From the proposition side, may I please have Phạm Bùi Dương Huy. Welcome. And from the opposition side, may I please have Lương Chí Anh. Nice. So do you have any particular tactic that's going to help you win the judge's heart?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm quite stressful right now, but I'm hopeful like all my preparations for all the previous days will be workful nowadays.
Okay, well, I believe in you, so good luck, okay?
Yeah, many thanks.
Thank you. And my friend, Mr. Hot Boy. Hi. I see you steal the hearts of a lot of our viewers, so how are you going to steal the hearts of the judges?
I have some new tactics that I'm going to implement in my speech. Yeah.
Some new tactics, like?
New structure, new rebuttals, new materials. I hope so.
Okay, well, good luck to you, okay?
Thank you.
Before we get started, let's review the rules really quick. For round 3, each contestant will have 4 minutes for their speech. POIs are allowed under 15 seconds, and we're going to start with the proposition side. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay, perfect. With that being said, let the debates begin.
Let me be clear on the definition. On our side of the house, we discuss something that we have no agreement on. On their side of the house, they debate without any asking. I'm gonna ask 2 questions in this debate. Firstly, about the decisions that benefit the children most, and secondly, on the social impacts. Firstly, I'm talking about the beneficiary on the children. I'm gonna talk about 3 things here. First, about mental health. Secondly, about the future decisions. And thirdly, even if the parents' decisions are good, why we still take this clash. Firstly, on the mental health. All of our mechanisms we prove on the problem mental health, we receive 2 responses. The first response is that on our side of the house, we have more abusive parents parents. Two responses. The first response is that on our side of the house, parents normalize the fact that children may have some discussion with their parents because they see that the neighbors also they have kids that may like this have disagreement with their parents. The second thing is that parents usually have high regard of the schools because in their generation to go to the school is a privilege, and everything that the teachers say them is is very, very precious. On your side of the house, because their parents are taught by the grandparents not to have any disagreements. On their side of the house, more abusive. The second response we get is that to obey, you have more freedom. I have some responses like on their side of the house, when you obey, their parents will take it for granted that every time you will obey. So whenever you have some disagreements, they will have punishments on you. So the impacts of this argument is very clear. Firstly, on the abusive of dreams, on our side of the house, we can have the children to pursue their dreams. Secondly, on abusive about identity, we have children more likely to come out as the LGBT because the parents gonna discuss about this. Second thing I'm gonna talk about is that parents are not absolutely good decisions. Firstly, I'm gonna talk about this. We are not completely disregard. We still discuss with parents. But furthermore, parents are not always right in the decisions because of difference in the generations. In the generation, for example, the job market is less competitive, so learning math and physics is enough. But in the present, to learning more extracurriculum activities boost your chance to get a job. But on the other side of the house, parents won't let you do the extracurriculum. Only on our side of the house we have discussed, we can persuade the parents on that. But even if their decisions are good enough, two things I'm gonna win. Firstly, about the happiness. Good career is not enough because you have to have the same amount of money, same amount of time to spend the money. What you get is to pursue the dreams, to pursue who you are. Second things, we have less serious mistakes. Let me be clear. On our side of the house, we think on our own, so we learn from it. On their side of the house, discuss with friends is not enough because friends usually talk about football, talk about films, or girls, something like that. So rather knowing that love is bad, for example, love is bad because after it harming our SAT scores, it is more better than losing our career opportunity because of love. The second thing I'm gonna talk about is the family and societal impacts. Before that, yes.
Your categorization is premised on the fact that children is fully rational and sensible, but you have given no mechanisms on why they are such irrational beings.
No, we don't have to say kids are irrational. We say that kids have the incentive to discuss with their parents. Second thing, on the social impacts. I'm going to talk about their principal arguments. The first principle is school have no right to intervene. I say that schools is the only institutions that can equip the knowledge for students so they can best equip to have a better future. So they have the right, not only the right, but also the obligation to intervene in this case. Secondly, they talk about parents is struggling. I say that we are not choose to be born. So parents must ensure that we have a happy future and happy life. So parents, regardless how they are struggling, I believe that they have an obligation to hear from the children and to give the best decisions. Panels, because on our side of the house we have more progressive parents, we have more happy children, and so that side with proposition.
Parents are among the most selfless individuals in the world who are willing to make sacrifices for the sake of the child's safety. Being obedient is the least thing we could do for them. Two questions I'll be asking in this speech. One, which side better foster child's development? Second of all, is morally justified to challenge parental authority? On to the first question. Before that, I will tackle the biggest push from side proposition, which is domestic abuse. Panel, the first thing we have to understand is that the whole case relies on the assumption that this child have sufficient knowledge to report and to speak up in the first place. But on either side of the house, if parents are such abusive, if parents are willing to invade their child's privacy and personal rights, on either side of the house, these abusive parents are still going to be abusive, are still going to abuse their child. But second of all, we have to understand the fact that being obedient is that parents have more weight in discussions between parent and child. It has nothing to do with your body autonomy and your rights. Side proposition need to give you some mechanism on why your parents have more weight in the discussions means that they can abuse you, sexually or mentally. The final thing I like to note is that abusive parents will want to manipulate their child, and if they know that educational institutions want to instill skepticism into their child's mind, they do not want to let their child access educational institutions in the first place, and children will have no understanding and have no knowledge about violence, about sex, and such issues. So even if assuming the best case scenario, which is that children on their side of the house, they can speak up, we have to understand the fact that on either side of the house, we still have NGOs, we still have legal forces, we still have the authority to intervene and to interfere in such cases. So the biggest push from side proposition has fallen, and it has not stand to the end of this debate. The second thing I'm going to address is the notion of success, and will your parents pressure you and create all of these mental problems as side proposition asserted. We have to understand the fact that assuming the best case scenario, this bear in the long run, because we have to understand the fact that the reality is harsh, the competition is getting harsher, and students have to adapt to this. But the problem is that we have categorized from the very beginning that children take hasty decisions for the reason that parents are legally liable for all of their decisions. They are sheltered from the consequences of their decisions, so they can take illicit drugs, they can follow youth trends, they can fear peer pressure, they can have the fear of missing out when their friends go partying while they stay at home studying. So the problem is that when side proposition have give you no response to rebut this categorization, it stands to the end of this debate. But assuming the best case scenario is that children are actually sensible and children are actually thoughtful. On either side of the house, parents were going to have trust in them and give them control over their life. The problem is that we do not understand why when children and parents talk as two adults, why parents are going to be such conservative and going to be such controlling as side proposition want to assert. But for the final thing we like to note is that there are other factors that come into play. For example, when you are over 18, you can totally make your life decisions. The debate is centered around when you are under 18, your life decisions, when you are live under the root of your parents, you should follow and you should be obedient. The third thing I'm going to discuss is how on their side of the house, children are going to be not as on our side of the house, they can actually learn some skills when parents told them to play some sport, when children told them to learn English and such skills. On their side of the house, when children and child have a respectful relationship, they're not going to listen, and they're not going to listen to what their parents told you. The final thing is that side proposition that on our side of the house, we do not have deep discussions. The problem is that our second speaker have told you why on our side of the house, when parents fear that they are respected and parents fear that they are actually being listened to, they are more willing to compromise and have deep discussions with their children. Therefore, vote for side opposition.
Nice work, guys. Judges, I see a thumbs up. Let's start with Mr. Stewart. Can I please hear feedback from Stewart?
The third round is particularly difficult because you're having to tie up any loose ends that were in the previous rounds. You're also trying to really assert why your world is more convincing or a better world than the others. For the proposition side, you did have good arguments, but for me it felt a little bit scattered. The connection between a lot of those ideas didn't always seem that apparent, and I think whilst the notions that you were putting forward were good, it felt a little bit scattered. I do appreciate that you ended your speech trying to explain why your world is ultimately more beneficial or more positive than the other opponent's world, but it still felt a bit limited. For the opposition side, you did address a lot of the issues and ideas that the proposition side was saying, and I think where your strength was in this round is that you had direct interaction with those points. The point that for me really stood out, because I thought it was actually quite creative, was the notion of actually on the other side, if there are parents who are skeptical about their children being taught respect, that may actually impact whether they choose to send those kids to those schools. So up for the creativity in terms of the point, and I also think your points were more neatly aligned with each other, my 10 points for this round will go for the opposition side. Okay.
Putting the opposition side with 50 points and the proposition side with 20 points. And Mr. Hugh, can I please hear from you?
I think the problem with your third round speech, as knowing you from the previous competition, is you have a lot of brilliant ideas, but you always struggle to put that in a nice structure. So I think there's a lot of good ideas in you about, I think the first reporter is very strong. It's about parents will normalize everything. I think that's a strong argument. There's one weakness in the second debaters of the opposition team. I didn't want to point out to give you prompters, but you guys kind of addressed that, because in the second debater, he said that schools shouldn't have the rights to educate students. And you say like school is the institution that is most fitted to do that. I think that is a very strong argument. So I think like there's a lot of strong ideas, but it's just what it needs is like just a nice structure and a nice flow. With the opposition team, of course, you guys come into the third round with a little bit of strong stance compared to the others. So a lot of your ideas are pretty much repetition and paraphrasing, which is a nice thing to do because you don't have to do much because you already a stronger stance. But I feel like in terms of further development, I think truly the opposition team, they bring more elements into the third round than you guys. So at this point in time, I feel like even though your stand is pretty much established, followed through, but I feel like with the contribution with the third round, the proposition team give me more nuances and I see more development in the ideas still coming in the third round. So that's why my 10 points go to the proposition team.
So 10 more points for you guys, bringing you up to 30 points and 50 points. And Ms. Wing, can I please hear from you?
There's definitely development in the third round, and I really enjoy your speeches. I generally agree with most of what my fellow judges say, so I'm not going to repeat on them. I want to go straight to the result. So there are three things I would consider when I judge this debate. First of all, you talk about school right, right? So it's really interesting point in here, as Mr. Hughes said, that the prop side brought up the right of school. This is the only institution that can, support the student in such a way. I think that's a very strong idea. Op side said, well, in that case, some parents can stop sending children to school. I think that response is smart, but it's not strong enough. So you need more characterization on that. So for the first one, prop take the point. The second thing I would consider is about parents' obligation. And I think this is very interesting as well. In this case, prop said, well, in the end of your speech, it's really nice when you say like, oh, parent has the obligation to actually listen and support to their children. I think this is a brilliant idea. You need a little bit push on that, but I can, credit what you say. Op said like, well, in this case, parents can be abusive and, there's one idea I feel a little bit weak on the opposition side when you say you're living under their proof, so you have to obey them. I think, okay, I can see where does that idea come from, but you, again, need to make it a little bit stronger. So in this one, I was like, oh, okay, I'll leaning a little bit to prop side. The last one is about the children's freedom and how the family discussion gonna look like. I think this is a tie between two teams, and you both need to persuade me a little bit more on this. So ultimately, as you can see, prop definitely take my 10 points in here, but again, it is a very, very close debate. And I think there are chances for both teams to take the debate now. It's anyone's game right now. Okay, good luck.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ms. Wee. And with that being said, prop, you guys have 40 points, and op, you guys have 50 points. And just as Ms. Wee did say, anybody could take it. It's anyone's ball, right? Thank you guys so much. You guys may have a seat. And stay tuned. We'll be right back with our last round of speeches.
On their side of the house, when you obey, their parents will take it for granted that every time you will obey. So whenever you have some disagreements, they will have punishments on you.
And if they know that educational institutions want to instill skepticism into their child's mind, they do not want to let their child access educational institutions in the first place.
I think there are chances for both teams to take the debate now. It's anyone's game right now.
Welcome back to the Debaters Season 3. We're now coming down to our reply speeches. This will be the deciding round for us. With that being said, from our proposition side, may I please have Khupman Thoi up to the stage. And from the opposition side, may I please have Phang Thay Việc up to the stage. Welcome back. So you've heard the critiques from 3 rounds. For your final round, what are we going to do?
I think I'm just gonna conclude the debate and do all the weighings and hope it turned out well.
Okay, well, good. Good luck to you, okay? And likewise for you, you've also heard all the critiques. How are you going to change for the very last round?
I think we'll just stick to our agreed plan. I'll try to fill in the very last holes and lack of, I guess, content in our speeches, and we'll try our best.
Okay, good luck to you, okay? Before we get started, I'm going to review the rules for our reply speeches. For our reply speeches, each contestant will have 2 minutes. There'll be no POIs allowed, and this time we will start with the opposition team. Any questions? No. Okay, with that being said, let the debates begin.
The greatest problem on their side of the house is that they never manage to explain to us why children are rational enough to make discussions with their parents. We say scientifically, one, they are influenced by their hormones as well as the social trends within today's society. We say then children are very unlikely to go on down the right path without the guidance of their parents. But now onto some fill in the holes of our case, right? I think the biggest problem on their side is this relying on the premise of abuse, right? I say one, on the moderate level, parents are most likely going to gaslight their children into disbelieving and doubting these schools, just like these schools are telling them to doubt the parents, right? But more on a societal and criminal level, this is our societal analysis, is that they won't even allow these children to go to schools in the first place in fear that they will be exposed. We say then on our side, at least children are allowed to go to schools, at least children will learn that these practices are not normal, and the less time they spend with their abusers, the better. Two, we say the match is very blurry, so we're trying to illustrate it through two main stakeholders, right? One, it's that students who do have passions, right? We say, sure, they are determined, they know what they want to do, but understand that let it be known that at the end of the day, the funding will be provided by their parents, and so far as the children never having the capacity to understanding these financial and mature burdens, these disputes will more likely to happen. We say then on, students who don't have these passions, who don't know what they're trying to go forward to, stay on. I think it's pretty obvious that we need guidance for them. But lastly, right, in terms of obedience, one, if parents fail, we say they'll own up to their mistakes because they are the adults. Two, if the kids fail then, which is likely to happen on their side, they will try to be even more controlling. But thirdly, right, let's say the parents don't fail and the kids try to obey, right? We say then the positive material here is that when parents trust us, when parents see that we won't act out, we won't be irrational, they'll trust us more and they'll give us a sense of freedom and allow us to have more sense of liberty and free will growing up later in our lives, right? Finally, we say it's incredibly naive to solely pin the blame of suicide, mental illness, and abuse and more, like Team Proposition says, on parents when billions of children have benefited from this. It is oddly convenient that Prop only ever mentions these parents while never mentioning the fault of these schools in these problems or how they will ever solve them. We say opposition clearly wins.
Clothes, party, career, friends. Those seem to be minor issues to adults, to parents. And however, those are the things that directly affect these kids' lives. Those are the things that kids are doing every day. And that is the reason why when kids feel depressed, when they commit suicides, when there are family separation, parents don't even know why those things are happening because they're always questioning. Those are the minor issues, just like the opposition side's parents always think. Now, coming to three problems here. First one on children. We think that our side is the one that provides natural growth for children, where they are not suppressed from showing their feelings. So when they do this, they develop the sense of critical thinking, that they have better communication skills when contacting with adults, how to raise their opinions and how to combat their own ideas. And outside of the house, also the side that will make less mistakes. And when they make mistakes, they understand the core problems later on in life. They will never make that mistake ever again. On their side of the house is only the surface, ladies and gentlemen. Now, on the second problem about the parents, we think that it's, on principle, we think that outside the house, they'll respect parents, right? So that is not much of a problem when we suddenly curse our parents or anything. And secondly, on the practical point, we think that outside, on the long run, is actually the one that protect the parents. Because in long term, when kids grow up, outside will be the one that make less irrational mistakes. The parents will not have to bear the responsibility as kids over 18 years old still ask their parents, what car should I buy, what career should I go into. That is when we see our parents' burdens are not bared anymore. And on a societal level, we think that our side is the only one that will break the conservative cycles that eventually will lead to a progressive society. That is the reason why we think that it's so important that on all these three stakeholders, on children, we say that it's outside that will push for natural growth, and on second, and also like prevent abusive family and make less mistakes. And on parent side, principle, we still respect parents. On practical, in the long run, parents will not have to bear the burdens of their child anymore. On societal level, we will be the one that is progressing. And overall, we say to the panel, why not let children practice all those practical thinking? Why not let children show their thought now, waiting for later on that they have to go to their life, go to college, go to cities, bearing the burden on their own and suffering from then. We think that it's better to start now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, guys. This round will be completely anonymous and we'll have no comments from the judges. Thank you, guys. Please take a seat. And we'll be right back with the results. Welcome back to The Debaters Season 3. Before we reveal our final results, we have a very special award for the most valuable speaker. We have a remote audience voting on their favorite speaker based on charisma and just plain old effort. So let's take a look at the board and see who will be our most valuable speaker today. Wow, and it looks like Khúc Minh Thủy, you win. Please step on up. Very good. It looks like you're the winner for our most valuable speaker. You'll also be awarded 1 million Vietnam đồng. So what are you going to do with your award today?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it yet. Never have I thought I would have this prize. So yeah.
Maybe you can take our team out to bubble tea.
Yeah, certainly.
Certainly. Okay. Well, here's that for you. And with that being said, can I please have the rest of our contestants up to stage so we can reveal our final results? Currently, as it stands, the proposition team has 40 points and the opposition team has 50 points. So this will be deciding the winner today. So let's see. First 5 points goes for the opposition team. The next 5 points goes for the opposition team as well. And the final 5 points goes for the proposition team. Okay, with that being said, proposition team, you guys have 45 points, and the opposition team has 60 points, making you guys the winners. Congratulations. But guys, don't feel let down because you guys still have another chance to get into the semifinals. I'd like to send a special thanks to our 3 judges and British University for sponsoring us and allowing us to have this program today. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.